Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rakahakwadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and in this video, I'll be profiling an article from newsbeezer.com titled, Guardian, the world is facing a nuclear cliff, avoiding a catastrophe, and there is no avoiding nuclear war. It's all a part of biblical prophecy. This is Revelation chapter 9, verse 12. One woe or destruction is past, referring to World War I. And behold, there come two woes more hereafter. World War II, which is past, and was also the first war to see the use of nuclear weapons, with those two atomic bombs dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And the third woe, World War III, which is coming quickly, and it will go nuclear. Just look at what you've been hearing about in the mainstream news media. These different nations talking about building up their nuclear arsenals and using them if need be, chiefly Russia and the United States of America. This is Isaiah chapter 9, verse 5. For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood. And all these wars leading up to these modern times, you had the ancient times where men would fight with swords and shields and sandals. Then you had your times with muskets where they still had bayonets and swords and would do charges. Even in World War II, men had bayonets. But as it says, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. Speaking of that third woe, World War III, which will be with the burning and fuel of fire of those nuclear missiles that are going to be shot to the ends of the earth. This is 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. And the header reads, a new heaven and an earth. But the day of the Lord will be as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise. And those heavens are speaking of this current age of the rulership of the heathen nations, chiefly of the biblical Edomites, who are known as these so-called white people, because in the scriptures, heaven and hell can be symbolic for a condition. When you're in your heavens, you're in rulership, and when you're in your hell, you're in captivity, bondage, like the children of Israel are, who are known as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans today. But when these nuclear missiles start flying, there's going to be a role reversal. The kingdom of heaven is going to be established afterwards, where the children of Israel are going to be in their heavens, rulership, while you heathen nations are going to be in your hell. 1,000 years of hardcore bondage and slavery building up the kingdom of heaven. But as for the other heathen nations, after that first 1,000 years, they'll be able to go back to their lands, though they'll still be under the laws, statutes, and commandments, the subjection of the children of Israel. But as for you Edomites, every single Edomite man, woman, and child, young and old, will be gathered up and permanently culled from this planet with fire. And it's beautiful that the thing that's going to end the rulership of these Edomites, nuclear missiles, nuclear fire, is going to be the same thing that's going to permanently put them off the face of the earth after that first 1,000 years, them being burned with fire, a Basra bonfire, if you will, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. And what's going to melt the elements with fervent heat and burn up the works in the earth? Those nuclear missiles. This is Zechariah chapter 14, verse 12. And this shall be the plague wherewith Yahweh will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is a people before it's a place. So this is speaking of the nation of Israel, specifically the elect right now. The 144,000 who are at the head of the elect, and then the rest of the elect. And those that have fought against Jerusalem are you heathen nations, and at the head of that list are you Edomites, as pursuant to Psalms chapter 83, mainly from the United States of America, Babylon the Great, which, when these nuclear missiles start flying to the ends of the earth, every place where you Edomites dwell are going to be hit with nuclear missiles, as well as some of these other heathen nations. But the United States of America is going to be the only nation that's going to be wiped off the face of the earth. It's going to be hit with 200 million nuclear missiles from not only its enemies like Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, but also its allies such as Britain, France, Germany, and these other NATO nations that at some point during World War III are going to turn against her and ally themselves with Russia. And when these nuclear missiles hit this place, it's going to turn it into the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards. And the only people that are going to make it out of this nuclear fire in Babylon are the elect of the nation of Israel. The 2/3 of our people who are wicked in America and don't want to come back to their power, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, as well as the rest of you heathens, hey, you're just going to be fuel for the fire. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. And a perfect visualization of this, which also goes to show that these Hollywood movie makers get their ideas from the scriptures, is that scene from Terminator 2 when Sarah Connor had that dream of nuclear destruction. Let's see if we can get one of these to play. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. Point blank, period. And there's nothing that will happen to avoid this nuclear conflict from taking place. It's all a part of biblical prophecy. No peace talks, peace treaties, weapons bans, or anything like that will avert the words of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai from coming to their fulfillment. This is Isaiah 55 verse 11. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. And who's the mouthpiece of the Most High? The prophets of the Most High, the men of the Lord, chiefly through GMS or Great Millstone, who go up, as well as the men who come in the spirit of GMS, going out onto the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles on the internet, reading from the scriptures, showing forth the prophecies of the Most High. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. Now let's get into a little bit of this article. Why the world is facing nuclear cliff, said Prime Minister of New Zealand Jacinda Ardern in an opinion piece in The Guardian, points out that we must avoid destruction at all costs. And Salakia for the grammar in this article. Whoever made this article did a bad job and didn't proofread it. The influential Prime Minister who, after handling the situation with the C-19 differently than most European countries, did not hesitate to take issue with the UN in July 2022, criticizing it for not ending the military conflict with Ukraine. She can now, to hide their concern about their handling of nuclear weapons from the states that hold them. I'm going to jump around a bit in this article just to get to the main points. The risk of a nuclear catastrophe is greater than ever. And that's because we're living in the last seconds of these last days before the end of this current age of the rulership of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites, and the ushering in of the kingdom of heaven. She draws attention to governments and stresses that the world is currently at greater risk of nuclear destruction than at any time since the height of the Cold War. Increasing tensions between the superpowers and 2 decades of stalled arms control advances have increased the danger of these weapons. 191 countries are currently meeting at the United Nations to renew the NPT, and negotiations are at a turning point. These talks offer an opportunity to breathe new life into nuclear disarmament at a time when the world needs it more than ever. It says he's stressed, but it's supposed to mean she's stressed. But hey, with the way Esau runs the society out here, you never know. This might have been a spiritual Freudian slip. She insists that nuclear destruction is not an abstract threat, but a real global hazard, stressing that nuclear weapons could be used in a conflict, as Russian President Vladimir Putin has hinted, or they could be miscalculated or misused at a time of escalating tensions. New Zealand calls on the nuclear weapon states, the US, Russia, China, France, and the UK to step out of the nuclear chasm and take that lead by committing to negotiating a new multilateral framework for nuclear disarmament, writes the Prime Minister, who told The Guardian, explaining why a country as geographically privileged as New Zealand is so concerned about the issue. So this article, but as we went through these precepts, we can clearly see that nuclear disarmament is not in the cards of prophecy. World War III, nuclear destruction, is coming to this planet, and it is quickly coming. Now I'm going to close out in Joel chapter 2. I'm going to read verses 1 to 6. Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain, which is what the men of the Lord are doing. Again, going out onto the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles on the internet. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of Yahweh cometh, for it is nigh at hand. And we can see that all these end times prophecies that Yahushai HaMashiach, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus Christ, told his disciples to look for in Matthew chapter 24, are either in the process of taking place or taking place as we speak, which just goes to show that the day of Yahweh cometh, and it is nigh at hand. A day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong. Speaking of these nuclear weapons, there have not been ever the like, because these nuclear weapons came about very recently, again, with those 2 atomic bombs dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima during the Second World War II. Neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. After these nuclear missiles start flying, every single one of them will be used, and after the dust settles, Yahushai HaMashiach, along with the 144,000 with those new spiritual bodies, who were fishers of men right now prophesying, are going to be hunters in that day, and we're going to enslave you remaining heathen nations, and you're never going to be allowed to build weapons of war anymore. A fire devoureth before them, speaking of the nuclear warhead at the head of the missile where the destruction is, and behind them a flame burneth, that rocket booster on the back of the missile. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them. The land looks normal. You have people, cities, parks, animals, life going on regularly, and behind them a desolate wilderness. After those nuclear missiles hit their targets, the land is made desolate, a wasteland like Fallout or Mad Max. Yeah, nothing shall escape them. The appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen, so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains shall they leap, like the noise of a flame of fire that devoureth the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array. Again, referring to these missiles, because when the prophets saw these visions thousands of years ago, they weren't going to say a Satan II nuclear missile, a ICBM, or anything like that. They had to describe it the best way they could with what they knew during their times, ancient weapons of war, like bows and arrows, spears, javelins, flying swords, etc., etc. Before their face, the people shall be much pained, the people in utter horror and terror, hearing those nuclear sirens going off and seeing those nuclear missiles flying through the sky, about to reach their destinations on top of their heads. All faces shall gather blackness, or ash or soot. These people getting burned up by these nuclear missiles. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope your sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. As we can clearly see, we're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.